There are sounds that need no introduction. They arrive, and something in the body recognizes them before the mind can explain why. A phrase that pauses exactly where it hurts the most. A melody that seems to know precisely how much an absence weighs. That is tango, a music that does not ask if you are ready to feel. It simply begins, and by then it is already too late to hold back. It was not born on a stage or in a conservatory. It was born on the riverbank, on the edge between water and city, between what had been left behind and what had not yet finished taking shape. For decades, the Rio de la Plata was a gateway for thousands of people arriving with little more than what they could carry. Italians, Spaniards, Africans, whose roots had already been woven into the continent for generations. People from the interior, port workers, entire families who had crossed an ocean and now looked out at a city that promised a great deal but guaranteed nothing. Buenos Aires and Montevideo were growing faster than anyone could manage. The conventillos, those shared courtyards where 10 families of different origins lived side by side, became the unlikely laboratory for something entirely new. There was no plan. There were people, there was need, and there was music. Each community brought something of its own. The Cuban habanera, already traveling the Atlantic with that syncopated rhythm that invites the body to move in a particular way. The milonga, with its African and Rio Platense roots, at once a celebration and a challenge. The candombe, which came from much earlier and had already left its rhythmic mark on how people in that part of the world felt time. Songs from the countryside, Italian melodic phrases, Spanish melancholy. All of it came together without any instructions, in patios, on street corners, in spaces the city had not yet decided what to do with. And from that mixture emerged something that was not any one of those things separately, but all of them together transformed into something else. What makes tango unmistakable is not simply a list of instruments, it is a way of breathing. There is something in its phrasing that mirrors human hesitation, that moment when someone wants to say something but takes just a second longer than expected. The melody moves forward, then stops, then folds back on itself, as if uncertain, as if it already knows that what it is about to say is going to hurt a little. That quality is not accidental. It is the result of a music made by people who had learned to live with ambiguity, with distance, with the feeling of belonging to more than one place, and at the same time not fully belonging to any of them. The bandoneon arrived later, but when it did, it felt like it had always been there. It is an instrument that sounds like it breathes with effort, as if each note costs something. It was invented in Germany for an entirely different purpose, but found its true destiny on the banks of the Rio de la Plata. There is something in its tone that captures exactly that tension between weight and lightness, between what one wants to release and what cannot quite be let go. It is not the only element of tango, but when it sounds, it puts something into the air that is difficult to describe in words. A feeling of time suspended, of memory arriving without asking permission, and then there is nostalgia. It is worth pausing here because tango did something with nostalgia that very few musical genres have ever managed. It did not turn it into complaint or decorative sorrow, it turned it into architecture. Nostalgia in tango is not simply sadness. It is a way of relating to time, to everything that once was and can no longer return, to people who are gone, to versions of oneself left behind in another place or another moment. There is a word in lunfardo, that language of mixture born in the same conventillos where tango was born, that captures something of this arrabal. The arrabal is not only the neighborhood at the edge of the city. It is the feeling of being on the margin, of looking inward from the outside. Tango lives in that margin. It does not try to resolve it, it simply lives there. The lyrics of tango built a world of their own. They did not speak of idyllic landscapes or perfect loves. They spoke of betrayal, of time passing without mercy, of loves that ended badly, of a city that changes until it no longer recognizes the person walking through it. There is a raw honesty in many of those lyrics, a willingness to look directly at what hurts without needing to soften it. That does not mean tango is always dark. There are tangos that are playful, witty, full of humor and irony. But even in the lightest of them, there is something that understands that lightness is an achievement, not a starting point. The dance made visible what the music expressed in sound, two bodies moving together without ever losing the tension between what belongs to each and what is shared. Tango as a dance is not full surrender or full distance. It is a constant negotiation, a physical conversation that never fully resolves. The tension that dancers hold in their bodies is the same tension that the music holds in time. Perhaps that is why tango was so misunderstood in its early years, so resisted by the upper classes who saw it as excessively intimate, excessively mixed, excessively honest. It was too real for a world that preferred elegance to truth. And yet that same quality that made it uncomfortable was what made it irresistible. When tango reached Europe, especially Paris, in the early decades of the 20th century, it generated an immediate fascination. What felt familiar and everyday in Buenos Aires struck Europe as exotic and emotionally intense, in a way that few genres could match. Tango traveled, transformed, gained new layers, and yet remained recognizable throughout. That ability to adapt without losing its core is one of the marks of a musical genre that has something genuinely true inside it. The 20th century was a journey of peaks and silences for tango. There were periods of massive popular success, enormous orchestras, packed ballrooms, figures who became legends. And there were periods of forced quiet, when newer genres seemed to take up all the space, when tango appeared destined to become a relic. But it did not disappear. It kept existing in the margins, in rehearsal rooms, in neighborhoods, in the memory of those who had lived it from the inside. And when Astor Piazzolla decided to take it somewhere no one expected, breaking with tradition without betraying it, tango proved that its essence was never about repeating itself. It was about remaining capable of holding human experience in a way that nothing else could replace. Today, tango is still alive, and not only as cultural tourism or a tradition preserved in museums. New generations dance it and compose it with the same urgency that the musicians of the conventillos once had. There are fusions, experiments, conversations with genres born on other continents and in other eras. But through all of that, something stays constant. That way of taking time seriously, of not rushing what hurts, of turning emotional intensity into a phrase the body understands before the mind catches up. Tango did not invent nostalgia, but it gave nostalgia a form. It gave it melody, rhythm, words, and movement. It turned it into something that can be heard, played, danced, and passed on. And in doing that, it accomplished something even deeper. It showed that loss does not have to disappear for life to continue. It can stay, transformed into music, and from there keep saying something that still matters. That is what remains when tango sounds on a still night. The feeling that memory is not only what was, but something still happening, still breathing, still aching with a beauty that makes no apologies for being real.